Okay, second graders, today the first thing we're going to do is learn about some new vocabulary for our next project. Let's start with the word pattern. Many of us probably know what the word pattern means, but we're going to use it a lot for this project, so we need to make sure we know exactly what it means. A pattern is when I repeat something. I can repeat a line or a shape or a color. These four boxes are examples of different types of shape and line patterns. When I repeat these triangles over and over, it makes a pattern. When I repeat these ovals over and over to make a design, it's a pattern. So you can see I'm repeating shapes over and over, or lines or colors. That is a pattern. We're also going to use a lot of overlapping shapes for this project. Overlapping shapes are shapes that share space. So when a shape is behind and then in front, that means they're sharing part of the space of the shape. So we're going to use a lot of layering and overlapping of shapes. Next, let's talk about symmetry. Symmetry is a word that means when something is the same on both sides. So we're going to use a lot of symmetrical shapes for this project. So this is an example of a symmetrical shape. If I was to cut a line right down the middle of the shape, this shape is the same on the right and the left side. However, this shape is what we call asymmetrical. That means not symmetrical. If I was to cut a line down the middle, it is not the same on the right and left side. We also are going to use something called radial symmetry. Now, radial symmetry is just a more specific type of symmetry. It means when something is the same all the way around in a circle. So these two pictures are examples of radial symmetry. If I was to cut a line down the middle, then down the side, and then diagonally, all of the little spaces of this flower are the same. Same thing for this little orange. If I was to cut lines down diagonally and up and down side to side, each of these little slices of the pie are the exact same. Now, let's talk about the style of art that we're going to be using for this project. We are going to talk about these two words, mandala and rangoli. These are two different types of art that come from different countries. A mandala is a work of art that shows symmetry and pattern, and these three pictures are examples of mandalas. Mandalas come from the country of Mexico originally. If you look closely at these three works of art, they are using a lot of patterns. They are symmetrical, and they're also showing radial symmetry. So these are very detailed designs that come from Mexico. Now, Rangoli is very similar, but it's a type of mandala that comes from India. And these also show patterns and symmetry, radial symmetry. But the difference between a mandala and a rangoli is that in India, they make their rangolis with colorful sand that they sprinkle on the floor, and these are used for celebrations. So one celebration they use this for is the celebration, very big in India. It's a celebration of their gods, and they put these rangolis on the floor in their home as sort of like a welcoming for their gods. So used during celebrations in India. Now let's talk about color. We're going to be using colors to eventually make a mandala. And two types of colors that we're going to be using for this project are monochromatic colors and complementary colors. Monochromatic colors means when I take a color like blue and I have many light and dark versions of that color. So you can see I'm using many light blues all the way to white and many dark blues all the way to black. And that shows many different types of my same color, which was blue. So monochromatic means one color, but many different versions of that color. Complementary colors, we know already, are colors that stand out well next to each other and look good next to each other. So the three sets of complementary colors are red and green, orange and blue, and yellow and purple. So we're going to use both of these types of colors in our project. So now that we know our vocabulary words, let's look at the first thing we have to do for this project. We are going to be making a digital mandala using the app called Assembly App. And you're going to be working with a partner. So after this video, I want you to choose a partner, and you're going to start to think about your design on this planning worksheet. You're going to start with your color scheme, and then you're going to build your shapes and your radial symmetry patterns onto this blank mandala here. So number one says, create a color scheme that shows monochromatic complementary colors. So in your eventual mandala, when it's finished, you have to use two complementary colors. For example, in mine here, I used red and green. And you have to use many versions of those complementary colors. So I'm using many versions of green and many versions of red. So right down here, you're going to color your color scheme with your partner. So if I chose red and green, I would first color red and then green in the middle. And then I would color many light versions of red and dark versions of red. For my green, I would color lighter versions of green and darker versions of green. My first and last box can be white and black, just like this one right here goes all the way to black. White and black, same thing for this one here. So in my eventual mandala, I'm using light greens, light reds, dark reds, black, and white. Those are the colors I'm allowed to use for my color scheme that I chose. Number 2 says, now choose at least 10 shapes or lines to add to your digital mandala by looking at the shapes in Assembly app. These are examples of shapes that you will find in Assembly app that you can use. Draw at least 10 of them here. Make sure they are showing radial symmetry and use some overlapping shapes as well. So you're going to choose some of these shapes. Just start with a simple shape, for example, a circle. And you're going to take your circle and repeat this circle in every pie slice in the same spot. Then choose another shape, maybe a square. Repeat that square in the same spot in each pie slice. Also, use some overlapping shapes. Maybe you can put 2 lines on top of the circle. So overlap some shapes. You can overlap 2 shapes, 3 shapes, 4 shapes, as many as you would like. I do want to see some overlapping shapes within your design. Now your goal is to have at least 10 shapes, but I would love to see you go above your goal. 10 shapes is the minimum, and that's very easy to do. When you finished your planning worksheet with your partner, come check with me, and then we will start making our mandala on Assembly app on the iPads. Let's get started.